Hey everybody, Tim here for today's episode of Discovery, Season 2, Episode 8, If Memory Serves, which is a great title, very fitting for a really good episode of Discovery. So, before I get too far ahead of myself, I'm going to back up. So, I'm, not superstitious per se. I really think coincidences can be interesting in real life. And so I've been doing these reviews for a while, and since I've started doing them, there has been a few coincidences. Probably my top two favorite are on April 5th, I was doing The Next Generation, and I was in Season 4, and when April 5th came, the review for that day was actually the episode of Season 4 in The Next Generation called First Contact. And April 5th, if you're a Trekkie, you know that is First Contact Day, April 5th, 2063. So that was an amazing coincidence. On First Contact Day, I did an episode called First Contact. Not the movie, but just an episode with that same title. So that was pretty cool. I really like that. To a lesser extent, but still really kind of funny to me, was I absolutely hate the Kelvin universe, and when I got to the Kelvin universe, it was my 666th Star Trek video, which, if you consider, the way that I do them, and, the groups that I do them in, and stuff like that, it's kind of a coincidence. It's definitely a sign or something. So, this episode is also a little bit of a coincidence that I think is really interesting. So I started doing these reviews on January 7th. It was supposed to be my New Year's resolution, and I had just been promoted to a manager, so I wanted a way that I thought was interesting to kind of help speak with other people, make my communication skills better. Obviously, not really working. So anyway, here it is, 11 months to the day, because today is December 7th, and this episode starts with a previously on, and it actually has clips from The Cage, which is the first review I did, was The Cage, because that's the first Star Trek pilot. So, I don't know, I think that's really interesting that 11 months to the day, they say previously on, and it goes all the way back to my first video. I don't know, stuff like that I think is really, really interesting. And the whole opening scene, I absolutely loved it, where we see, Talos 4, and we see Pike getting captured, and the aliens with the giant heads and their stuff, and all of the, the way they manipulate the illusions and stuff like that. I thought was really, really great. It actually kind of made me look it up, because I started thinking, Leonard Nimoy died, because that would have been an interesting connection. And then I know Jeffrey Hunter, the original actor that played Pike, died. I actually looked it up. There's only one surviving cast member from the original Cage. So it's really sad, because they've all passed away. Even Majel Barrett has an appearance in that flashback, which now she's played by Rebecca Romaine. So stuff like that, really interesting, really liked it. And I don't know, I think it's a coincidence that it's 11 months to the day, my first episode, and then a previously on reference to that one. So I liked it. Anyway, we see Vina make her appearance again, a character we've seen before, new actress, obviously, and just her with Pike and their relationship together was really interesting. The whole thing where it's Section 31 and they're talking to the admirals, and it's an Andorian, a Vulcan, a Tellarite, and a human, and it's okay, so it's the founding members of the Federation. Kind of interesting, I guess. And then, Georgiou, it talks about how, I think she's talking to Leland, and she's like, it's artificial intelligence needs to listen to me instead of the other way around. I was like, wait, were those, actual admirals? That whole thing, I think I missed a bump in there. I got distracted. I was probably still, on the previously on thing. Because I think they actually are admirals, because I think we see them later on. But still, it was just a weird segue. It was too quick for me. And why do we see one of each of them? And I've already talked about how I'm not digging the Tellarites, and I'm fine with the look of the Andorian, but their voices are weird. They did something to that. The whole scene with Michael and Spock going to Talos 4 and the black hole, and it's an illusion, is great. The first scene where we see Culber and sees Tyler just passing in the walkway was intense. assuming he remembers everything up to his death, and then passing that, I mean, he remembers that thing. So it'll be interesting to see where that goes. Michael in the singing plants, where she like holds on to it, which we even saw that in the previously on, where Pike and Spock both grab onto it, and Spock smiles. So, which, because they didn't know Vulcans didn't have personalities at that point in the series, that was still kind of a developing thing. The Telosians are great. Like, I actually like how they updated them. Even if you put, like, one next to the other, like, they did a good job. And if I remember right, the Cage, all of the Telosians were played by female, even if they were male-type characters, whereas this one clearly has, like, different sexes. So I thought that was interesting. Spock saw Michael's death as a child, and then that's why, like, he's like so connected to her, and the angel changed Michael's fate with her like being chased by the monster. And so stuff like that's really interesting. And then, I mean, that goes back to where like Michael hurts him as a child, which we see later on. Spock does a mind meld with the Red Angel, so we kind of get even more like going on with that character. Like I said, the whole fight with like Culber, let me back up. Because first it's Stamets and Culber have a fight. Because Culber's having a rough time. Like, he was just resurrected from the dead. And, like, just Stamets and Culber fighting is really sad. Like, I think they've changed Stamets as a character drastically. I hated him when we first saw him. He's still definitely not a favorite of mine, but he's mellowed out quite a bit. And so now, evidently, he's too much. I talked about last episode how, like, a Spock with a beard is just weird to me. And Spock and Michael actually do a good job for that brother-sister arguing. I still don't like that they're brother and sister, but they do, like, the writing is really good. And then, like, where she's just like, do you actually think the beard is working? I was like, damn. Like, they referenced it right away. And he even, like, goes to touch it. And so I was like, okay, well, good. Shave it off. I don't like it. I don't think Spock needs it. Finally, Culber and Tyler have the fight that everybody was kind of waiting for in the mess hall. And Saru, like, lets it go. He's just like, no, this needs to play out. And even Pike's like, don't do that again. Like, you need to stop that. So I was like, oh, that's actually kind of impressive. Like, I really enjoyed that. We learned that Michael's family was kind of targeted by the extremists, which is something we've seen before. And she wants to leave to save the family. And Spock, an emotional little kid Spock, wants her to stay because he thinks of her as his sister, and she has to hurt him, and that's the whole thing. Like, she calls him, like, a freak and a little hybrid and all sorts of stuff, and then that's what kind of drives the wedge apart. That's what Amanda was so upset, and it actually turns Spock more from embracing his humanity into becoming more Vulcan than human. It was actually really interesting. Like, I actually liked it. So the whole scene where, like, Section 31 thinks they get them was, I don't know, it was funny. It was good. Where she's like, say goodbye, Spock. And he's just like, goodbye, Spock. It's a very, like, say goodnight, Gracie type moment. And then they just fade away because it's one of the Telosian illusions. It was a little over the top. Like, this whole season's kind of, like, definitely made strides in the dialogue and stuff. But then you kind of get moments like this where you're just like, that was odd, but it was very fitting, and it was nice to see, like, Vina again, and the Telosians again, and stuff like that. Like, I think a lot of the references were really well done. I really, really enjoyed it. The whole episode as a whole, not my favorite, but I do think it was a great, like, nostalgia-type episode. So, for those who have seen it, what did you guys think? Especially, I'm kind of curious, those who have never seen The Cage before, did you like it, or did you find it confusing? And then if you have seen The Cage before, did you think it was a great sequel? Because the original series, this takes place roughly 10 years before the original series, and then I think it's, like, supposed to be 2 years after The Cage. So The Cage was not that long ago. So go ahead, let me know what you guys think, and I will see you guys next time for Project Daedalus.